Hi! Before we begin, just a quick note. This first episode dives right into complex and sometimes sensitive terrain. I speak about vulnerability, marginality, and how photography can reveal or even expose these realities. If you're joining me for the first time, welcome. I hope you'll stay with me and that you'll find the space here thoughtful and reflective, one step at a time. I'm Philippe, and this is Philippe's Moment with Photography and Walking. Each episode, we start with an image, one that opens onto a story, a street, a memory. Today's photograph leads us into a moment suspended between looking and moving, between the still and the fleeting. Thanks for being here. So, you might think that photography and walking always go hand in hand. A photographer roaming the streets, camera at the ready, searching for the special moment. But what if the photo we're discussing doesn't show anyone walking at all? No sidewalk, no street, not even a hint of motion. Still walking is everything behind this image. How it was found, how it was shot, and how it changes what we see. In today's episode, we'll explore a single photograph taken in Bombay, now Mumbai, in the late 70s by Mary Ellen Mark, a photographer known for immersing herself in the fringes of society. Her subjects often live on the edges: heroin addicts in England, women in psychiatric hospitals, and here in Bombay, sex workers in one of Asia's largest red light districts. Mary Ellen Mark didn't just point and shoot. She walked, wandered, waited, and eventually was accepted into spaces where foreign photographers, especially women, were not always welcome. The photo we're focusing on was taken inside a brothel on Falkland Road in the Kamathirupa district, a narrow street lined with decaying wooden buildings and cage-like rooms. In this picture, we see a woman named Lata lying half naked on a mattress in a room no larger than a closet. The confined space features wooden walls that the flash reveals painted jade-green and worn with dirt. The orange paisley-patterned mattress occupies the entire area between the grimy walls where the young girl lies staring at the camera. The high angle of the shot, achieved with a wide-angle lens, intensifies the claustrophobic feeling of the image. Mary Ellen Mark originally envisioned this documentary around the Falkland Road red light, which she had contemplated for 10 years in black and white. However, Geo magazine required color photos for the project that ultimately allowed her to spend from October 1978 to January 1979 on Falkland Road, so she could share the lives of the women she also got to know well. In the text she wrote for the monograph she published on Falkland Road, Mark recounts that it was by relentlessly pacing the area that she allowed herself to live the whirlwind of emotions and activity around her. But in the photo she took of Lata, there is no movement. No one is walking. Yet the path to this image is made entirely of footsteps. Mary Ellen Mark once said, "I started out just by walking the street." But this wasn't easy walking. At first, she was met with jeers, thrown garbage, and open hostility. A foreign woman invading a male-dominated, deeply marginalized space. She didn't gain access with her camera. She achieved it with her persistence, her walking. Over time, her presence became familiar, tolerated, and eventually invited. Walking became not just physical movement, but a method of negotiation and trust-building. In the photo, Lata's fragile, almost doll-like twisted posture recalls surrealist imagery, reminiscent of André Kertész's 1926 photo of a contorted woman on a couch. However, unlike Magda Forstner, the Hungarian cabaret dancer and aspiring actress Kertész photographed, Lata remains unnamed, mentioned only in Mark's diary, and largely unknown outside of this image. One woman was documented, the other exposed. By the way, you can follow the link on my website, photographyandwalking.com, if you want to see the photos and documentation for this episode. That contrast between the two figures matters. It draws our attention to what documentary photography shows and what it hides. The philosopher Judith Butler once said that a critical image must not only fail to capture its referent, but show its failure. Don't worry, I won't drag you into a rabbit hole of theory. In plain terms, this means that powerful images don't claim to explain everything. Instead, they acknowledge what can't be fully seen or understood, especially regarding marginalized beings. Mary Ellen Mark's image does just that. It doesn't offer answers. It invites questions. It lets us feel the discomfort of looking without full comprehension. The district, with its vibrant colors and decaying textures, was already fading away, and her photographs now serve as a rare, vivid record. Yet, we must be cautious. This represents a Western lens observing an Eastern reality. Mark was respected, yes, but still an outsider. Her images carry a double weight. They document, but they also select, interpret, and frame. Mary Ellen Mark could walk away. Lata could not. Mark's presence as a female documentary photographer in a space historically dominated by men is significant. Since the early days of photography, sex work has recurred as a notable subject, and on another continent from Falkland Road, Paris has consistently been a city where photographers have documented sex workers. For instance, Eugène Adjet and Jane Evelyn Atwood both produced important photographs around this theme. A few years before Mary Ellen Mark began photographing Falkland Road, Atwood devoted an entire year to capturing images in and around the Rue des Lombards brothels in Paris. Speaking of Adjet, it is relevant to note that photographic history generally identifies Eugène Adjet as one of the early photographers to document prostitution. His late 19th and early 20th century photos in Paris consistently portray street life and marginalized figures, particularly in the red light districts around Montmartre and Rue Saint-Denis. Although he did not label them as prostitution pictures, they have since been analyzed within that social context. Furthermore, whether or not their intent was documentary, commercial nudes and pornographic photos featuring streetwalkers as models have existed since photography's earliest days. But returning to Bombay, Lata's brief appearances outside were transactional. Moments of advertising, quickly followed by a return to confinement. For Mark, walking meant discovery. For Lata, it meant vulnerability. So what does this photo, in which no one is walking, tell us about walking in photography? Everything. It reminds us that the act of walking isn't always visible in the image, but it's often what makes the image possible. It also challenges us to think about who has the right to walk, to enter, to leave, and who doesn't. In Mary Ellen Mark's photo, walking leads to a picture. In Lata's world, walking leads back to a room that may never really open. Thank you for listening to Philippe's Moment with Photography and Walking. As I close today's reflection on Mary Ellen Mark's photograph of Lata in Falkland Road, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the ethical weight of this subject. This image confronts us with a difficult history, one that involves child exploitation, cultural displacement, and the politics of representation. I speak from the position of a white Western viewer, fully aware of the limits and responsibilities that come with that role. My intention here is not to tell Lata's story, none of us can, but to think through how her image reaches us, what it asks of us, and what it reveals about how photography operates on the edge of witness and voyeurism. I also want to acknowledge that Mary Ellen Mark herself, though deeply embedded in this world, was not immune to the complexities of power and access. Her work, like mine, stands to be questioned and re-questioned. This podcast is about those thresholds, where walking meets looking, and where images push us to think harder about how we see. Thank you again for joining me on this walk, and until next time.